Now, you've already pointed out that Soros-backed NGOs are working on getting people into the country illegally and everything else. So I don't think it's a wild stretch to imagine they'd also be coordinating in order to do violence against ICE to keep these people inside the United States. How much credibility is there to the idea that the Soros network is funding this? And if so, are they just an ancillary funder to this, or are they core to pushing this agenda?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a sum of parts kind of thing. Like that 1 billionaire, the Maoist who funds the Party for Socialism and Liberation, is a kind of a similar funder. But there was Soros money in the LA riots against ICE recently, a lot of the No Kings protests, although to be fair, that was like a million different groups that assembled. And then you go back to the 2014 Michael Brown riots, and a lot of the groups there were funded by him, and the George Floyd riots, a lot of what they would do then is they would fund these like Black Lives Matter adjacent groups. So it would be called, the Movement for Black Lives. And then when Candace Owens said, he's funded Black Lives Matter 50 million, PolitiFact goes, no, they didn't. It was this other group that's a complete clone of it, but has a different name. So it's not true. So he does that. And this is where it gets harder to prove, but the sort of funds category where he's layering the money through groups, like going to the Tides Foundation, which then gives to other groups. When I was reviewing the most recent year of grants from the OSF that were $500,000 or more, all the ones that were like 10 plus million to a group, you go to their website and it would present itself as like a normal activist group, but there would never be any news articles about them. Their social media would be dead, inactive, no followers. Their address is like either a PO box or an office space in like some uninhabitable shithole where a 6-story home is $5. A place where no one would actually have an office if they were making $10 million in grants. So then I would go through their financials, and they were just pass-through entities disguised as activist groups, where that money would then go to a different group that would go to a different group. And it makes it impossible to prove where any one specific dollar ends up. Like if I give $1 million to someone who was $1 billion and they spend $1 million on, I don't know, weapons, I could technically be like, well, mine was part of the $999 million that wasn't spent on it. And that is what the OSF does when they try to deny things. Or my favorite line is, we didn't knowingly give a grant to a group that was going to do violence. And I'm like, they have a whole history of doing violence. You're hoping your dollars are the ones that coincidentally do what exactly? So that's how they hide behind those allegations. But he's behind that. And then also, and one of the chapters about Alex fighting the Trump agenda, a lot of the immigration-related lawsuits, and most of which have failed, fortunately, but are from Soros-funded legal groups. And this includes groups like the ACLU, which Soros has given over $50 million to, although obviously they have so many other funders. I don't actually weigh them that highly, but a lot of other smaller groups where Soros is a very large percentage of their funding. And the trying to block birthright citizenship, illegals in the census, things like that. Soros groups have been behind in the courts.
So obviously, as you say, very complicated network of money laundering. You're giving large foundations money. They're giving you money. All those are going to different organizations, many of which with the exact same mission, but with 15 different names. So you can never nail down one as the major actor. None of this, of course, is a mistake. Obviously, we know that there's a reason that they structure their organizations like this. And unfortunately, it's been very successful. And that begs the question, right? Like when we look at these smaller countries, I can understand ultimately how George Soros buys Lithuania, right? Like yeah. I would hope that the leaders would ultimately be more loyal to their own nation than they would be to this outside funding. But you get it; it's a poor country. They need the industry. Who's going to turn down all of this ultimately? However, he doesn't just have that influence in these small, easily buyable kind of third world-ish nations. He has that level of influence in top tier first world nations as well. And that really makes us wonder, why is a guy who, for all we can tell, just has like money, just has a fortune, why is he allowed to go in and buy large chunks of sovereign nations with military and intelligence assets? Like at the end of the day, if I'm one of these major countries and a guy like this is coming in to buy up all of my politicians and open my borders and destroy the ability to put criminals in jail, well, let's just say, some wet work might get involved. Like there are solutions to this problem that are available to people with, large missiles and strike teams and Navy SEALs that aren't available to maybe Latvia. So why are people allowing the manipulation of their sovereign, geopolitically dominant governments by a guy who ultimately shouldn't be able to, wield a single troop?
Well, because we've had people in office who've been benefiting from it. I mean, Obama took his money. The George McCain Institute was funded by George Soros. Even as they were putting out anti-George Soros materials, they were being funded by George Soros. And Cindy McCain and Alex are good friends. They work together. They're photographed together every year and speak highly of each other. So even like the old guard conservative right would, rally against George Soros, but it was one of those things that was performative. Like we learned, for instance,
it's just like where we get Compact Magazine, which is supposed to be anti-globalist, but is funded directly by the biggest globalists in the world.
There was a whole conservative class who just wanted to endlessly critique the left, and we learned too after Roe v. Wade was struck down that half of the conservative National Review types were all pro-choice, but just thought Roe v. Wade would never get struck down, so they'd never have to actually
right
for a legitimate pro-life position. But yeah, a lot of stuff like that, and I always wonder what would the angle be to go after him, because when it comes to funding politicians, it's presumably going to get upheld as a free speech thing. Obviously, there's a lot of people giving money in politics, although Soros is the most destructive. But hey, isn't it? I suppose a lawyer would have to argue, well, who gets to define subjective, destructive? I'd be sounding like a libertarian. But I think the RICO case from Trump is the strongest, in that he is knowingly funding groups that are doing harm, and that's why I've noticed in their press releases they say they don't knowingly fund them. That's their defense in response to the new attention. And the word knowing is doing a lot of very, very heavy lifting. So listen, the ultimate test would be if they keep funding them after saying we're not knowingly doing this, then it's 100%, although they, of course, know. And then I think a tax audit is in order, in that I went through a lot of groups where the financials just do not make any sense to me. There'll be one where they'll be in an office and the office expense is $100 a year and there's no computer or internet expense, and I'm like, what exactly is going on here? Even if you're a front group, you expect that to be a couple grand. Am I wrong? So just weird stuff like that. And even so, the process kind of is the punishment. We learned from all the people going after Trump, and I think that's sort of overdue. And they'll probably find a lot of things we never even thought we would have found. The discovery would reveal a lot, and there's just no reason not to, if we can.